Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It's official. Mexico's own WBA Super Bantamweight champion Erica Cruz will be defending her title May 11th against Argentina's own Nazarena Romero on the undercard of Hernandez versus Lugo, south of the border in what is a matchroom show.
En Aguascalientes, Mexico.
What's that mean?
Hot water.
We've known this fight was en route for some time now. We've known that Nazarena Romero of Argentina, the unbeaten slugger, power puncher, she is Erica's mandatory challenger. She's been vying for this fight, and now she's got it.
Pressure fighter versus pressure fighter.
Nazarena Romero, who is some years younger than the reigning champion. Nazarena's 29, whereas Erica's 33. Nazarena is an orthodox fighter, whereas Erica, she's a southpaw. Nazarena sports a professional record of 13 wins with no losses, 1 draw, 7 knockouts.
To Erica Cruz, who sports a professional record of 17 wins with 2 losses, no draws.
3 knockouts in terms of single punching power. Nazarena Romero has more of that. There's more power in a single punch from Nazarena than Erica, but they are both pressure fighters. They are both volume punchers that are aggressive and throw punches in bunches. So this is going to be a shootout unless somebody breaks character, and I don't think they're going to.
Pressure fighters seldom do.
Seldom ever break character. What's working for Erica is that she does have more experience than Nazarena comparatively. She does have more fights, more rounds in the bank, and she has been in there with better fighters than many of the fighters that Nazarena has been in there with.
That Erica's quality of competition overall has been better than Nazarena's.
What's working for her is that she is more experienced with more rounds in the bank than Nazarena, as well as where the contest is taking place. It's taking place in Mexico. It's taking place south of the border.
Erica's got home field advantage.
That in the event that the rounds are close and the fight is tight, in all likelihood, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, Erica will get consideration. She is the home fighter.
The house fighter.
That's what's working for her in the event that it goes to a decision. What's working against her is that Nazarena doesn't try to go to a decision.
She doesn't try to go to the cards. She tries to stop you.
She tries to knock you out. Nazarena Romero, who saw action 2 times last year, 2 times. She was last in action in June opposite the ring, Mayerlin Rivas, who was very lucky to leave with her belt that night due to a clash of heads. The contest was ended prematurely and scored a draw where it should not have been. Nazarena Romero was winning that fight, and she was on her way to stopping Mayerlin Rivas.
She was putting the pressure on.
Erica Cruz did the same thing in November of last year after Mayerlin's fight with Nazarena. Erica fought her, and Erica was putting the pressure on, but she wasn't as effective or devastating when doing so against that same opponent.
Using the same base style.
Same strategy. Closing a distance, throwing punches in bunches, trying to pin down and unload on what is a moving target.
Personally, I think Nazarena did a better job.
She should be champion already, right now. And Mayerlin was just very fortunate that the powers that be pulled her out of that situation.
Just to end up losing to Erica. Now, Nazarena is Erica's problem.
Now Erica has to deal with her. And because they're both volume punchers, that means they're going to be fighting fire with fire, though Nazarena is seemingly the stronger puncher, the much stronger puncher of the two.
You say that Erica Cruz went the distance with Amanda Serrano, one of the strongest punchers in the sport.
That if she could go the distance with Amanda at 126, she may be able to go the distance with Nazarena at 122.
But I don't know.
This is a tough assignment that will determine who the better pressure fighter really is.
Nazarena or Erica?
Nazarena is fresher. She is younger. For me and my money, much, much stronger and more explosive. So if you leave yourself open to be caught,
she'll catch you.
This seems like a pick'em fight to me. A fight where, yeah, maybe Erica could win a decision, or maybe Nazarena makes it to where it don't go to the cards.
There ain't no decision because she knocks her out.
We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. In men's junior middleweight news from the desk of the Boxing Voice, Glenn Jennings, the manager of Tszyu, tells us that they would consider vacating the WBO after this weekend to make a Spence fight, but he prefers to table that conversation until Monday. He did say they are willing to fight Crawford next, but being able to go in with Spence first is just from a manager's standpoint, certainly not a fighter's. What would be the point in fighting Errol Spence Jr. after this weekend, given the shellacking that he suffered?
The beating he took.
Everyone saw what Terence Crawford did to him. Why would you table a Crawford fight to fight the man that Crawford beat, the man that Crawford annihilated in the summer of last year, in the summer of this one?
And if it costs you a title,
You're willing to sacrifice a belt to fight Errol?
instead of Terence.
I don't know how likely that is to happen, as that is coming from Glenn Jennings, not Tszyu, not Tszyu himself. Tszyu's manager claims Crawford wants $15 million for Tim up front from preliminary talks.
It's a lot of money.
But that's what Crawford is in it for at this point. He's in it for the money. He's already decorated. He's already been a 3-division, 3-time lineal, 3-time Ring Magazine, 2-time undisputed champion. This fight would make him a 4-division champion, but he wants to make some money, and in his mid-30s, I can't say I blame him.
You don't think that number's too high?
Maybe at first, but when you consider that Tszyu, he's set to be making $10 million from this weekend's fight. If Tszyu can make $10 million fighting Sebastian Fundora, then why can't a more decorated fighter in Terence Crawford make 15 fighting him, fighting Tim? Remember,
It's not just that he's more decorated.
Terence Crawford's last fight was the Errol Spence Jr. fight, and that fight did robust numbers at the box office. It brought in between 600 and 700,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, I don't expect the Tszyu fight to do that many buys, but I expect it to do between 3 and 4.
In the American market, maybe 3, little over 300,000, or close to 4.
And that's just in the American market. That's not counting the Australian market and what other revenue you might be able to generate auctioning off the foreign rights to the fight, say the UK rights. When you look at it through that lens, suddenly 15 million, it's really not that big a number, not so big that they can't find ways to get at it.
My thoughts.
Maybe Glenn Jennings is getting cold feet. He doesn't like his guy's chances in that Crawford fight. That's what it is. Or maybe he feels they may not be able to get him that 15 million that he wants, so they're willing to look at somebody else. They're looking at Spence. But what's Spence going to want for a Tszyu fight? What's it going to take to get him in the ring with Tszyu?
It's a valid question.
On the eve of this weekend's Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora fight, the Tszyu team seemed non-committal to a Crawford fight afterwards, but let's not jump the gun here.
Some people already have.
I already see people accusing Tszyu of ducking Terence Crawford. I already see people jumping to that conclusion. In the event that the fight doesn't happen, what should Crawford do next?
What about Teofimo?
Teofimo Lopez. I'm not against the Teofimo Lopez fight, but there are certain questions that need to be asked.
Like what?
In the time that he started this campaign to land a Terence Crawford fight, has he actually filed his paperwork with the WBO to become Terence's mandatory challenger? Because in that same amount of time, that's what Terence did. Terence filed his paperwork to become Tim's mandatory challenger. Has Teofimo done that for him?
Has he started that process?
Terence didn't do a bunch of media. He didn't do a bunch of interviews. He didn't tell this person and that person that he wants to fight Tszyu next. No, behind closed doors, he filed the paperwork to make it happen. Has Teofimo done that?
It's a legitimate question.
Oh, he's found time to do the rounds on social media and do interviews about it. He's found time to talk about it, but did he find the time to actually make it happen?
It's a legitimate question.
Has anyone from Top Rank reached out to Terence Crawford to see about doing that fight? Because Terence Crawford, technically, he's a free agent. He doesn't have a promoter behind him. Teofimo does. So if you were going to try to do that fight, it would have to be on Top Rank's dime. So has anyone from Top Rank opened up a dialogue with Terence and his team to see about doing that fight?
It's another valid question.
Has Teofimo felt the paperwork? Has anyone from Top Rank reached out? And if the answer to both of those questions is no, then Teofimo's not even in the conversation.
He just wants to appear like he's in the conversation, because in the time you're doing all these interviews, Terence was filing his paperwork for Tim. Why weren't you filing your paperwork for him?
So, back to Terence and back to Tim. Glenn Jennings has now publicly expressed an interest in facing Spence next instead of Terence Crawford. If that fight were to materialize, if Tim were to face Errol Spence Jr. next, I think he would retire Errol.
He'd knock him out.
I don't have a doubt in my mind that if Errol Spence Jr. were to fight Tszyu in his very next fight, having suffered what he suffered in his last one, Tim would put him down, and Tim would knock him out.
What's the likelihood of the fight happening?
You see, that's why I'm not jumping to conclusions.
Why?
The story is that Errol Spence Jr. recently parted ways with his longtime trainer, Derek James. So at this time, he's between trainers.
He could be.
Just because Glenn Jennings throws his name into the hat, that doesn't mean that Errol is on board. That doesn't mean that Errol has expressed an interest in fighting Tim. That could just be Glenn Jennings bouncing ideas around. At this time, I know of no dialogue between Team Tszyu and Team Spence.
So if the question is, what's the likelihood of the fight happening?
I don't have the answer to that question. The most we've seen from Errol in recent memory is him on holiday with the missus. He's been on vacation, it seems, since the Crawford fight. We haven't seen anything of him back in the gym.
In a Tim Tszyu fight, that's not a rebound fight.
It's not. He's bigger than you are, younger than you are, I think stronger as well.
That's not a rebound fight.
And after the beating that he took in the summer of last year, Errol Spence Jr. needs one. He needs a rebound fight, a little gimme fight, confidence booster to get him back in the winner's bracket and set him up for something bigger. But if you go right in with Tim, you're gonna get knocked the fuck out.
That's what Glenn Jennings figures, and that's why he's throwing his name into the hat.
The way I see it, I wouldn't jump to too many conclusions just yet. Let's get through this weekend's fight and let's see what tune they're singing on Monday morning. As it pertains to yet another one of this weekend's fight, the upcoming Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez versus Arsene Goulemarian fight, Gilberto says he wants to build a bridge to boxing for Mexican fighters.
He's got plans.
And I don't think losing to Arsene Goulemarian is part of them. Since signing with Golden Boy Promotions in 2021, Ramirez has been angling towards bigger things for Zurdo Promotions. I eventually want to bring it to the United States, Ramirez told Boxing Scene. I think I'm the bridge for Golden Boy and Mexico. Ramirez owns a gym in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, and also runs Zurdo Promotions and his charitable arm out of Mexico. He says eventually he wants to bring his fighters directly to Golden Boy, calling the promoter a pleasure to work with. I love being part of the Golden Boy Promotions family, Ramirez said. We have been working very hard, and he needs to, because in this weekend's fight, unlike in his last fight, he has a bona fide cruiserweight in front of him. Not a light heavyweight who moved up in weight in Joe Smith Jr. Not a guy like himself.
A cruiserweight.
A full-on cruiserweight and an unbeaten champion who does not yet know how to lose. Thus, Zurdo must teach him the hard way.
Can he do it?
When you look at both boys side by side, you could see the difference in build. That even though Arsene Goulemarian might be 1 or 2 inches shorter than Zurdo, he's got a bigger body. He's a beefier guy with a wider face, wider skeleton, if you will.
Whereas Zurdo looks leaner.
I love being part of the Golden Boy Promotions family, Ramirez said. We have been working very hard. Obviously, Oscar De La Hoya is my idol, and Bernard Hopkins too. It's great to work with them. They give me really good advice all the time. Ramirez, who anticipates a June date for his next promotion in Mexico, wants to help his country's up-and-coming fighters with the same support he once received. I like to work with all people there because that used to be me there, Ramirez said. These people used to help me to come for nothing. Now I can help them. I like to do that. We don't charge anything. Everything is free. We make sure that they are always motivated.
I hope he is.
I remember after Zurdo Ramirez gave his corner a complete overhaul, he parted ways with Top Rank, sacked his management team, and that's when Zurdo Promotions, his promotional company, that's when I first caught wind of it. After all of that happened in between the time he left Top Rank and right before he joined Golden Boy, I wasn't even aware he was still promoting fights. I'm always training there, and they get to see me in the gym and make it on the TV. I love to spend time with them, and they love it too. I don't know if I can be a trainer, but I like to help the fighters.
Gotta help himself this weekend. The Zurdo Ramirez versus Arsene Goulemarian cruiserweight title fight is going head-to-head with the PBC pay-per-view.
And that's the difference between them, that the Golden Boy show is the cheaper alternative to the PBC pay-per-view. If you want to watch boxing on Saturday night, it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg, but it could cost Zurdo. If you haven't already familiarized yourself with Arsene Goulemarian and what kind of fighter he is, turn your attention to the screen. This is a big guy, beefy guy.
Mid-range to inside fighter.
There's not a whole lot that jumps out at the screen at you when it comes to Arsene Goulemarian, but you have to remember what the circumstances are. Zurdo Ramirez has not been at cruiserweight all that long.
At super middleweight and at light heavyweight, Zurdo was a mid-range to inside fighter. He was a pressure guy, a close quarters guy, but with him...
With Arsene, he can't do that. You can't hope to win this fight through strength of arms when you haven't really been on the deep end at cruiserweight yet.
This guy's a hooker.
Like you were a hooker at 168, 175, like you were a mid-range to inside fighter, so is this guy. But this guy's used to fighting other cruiserweights. You're not.
To top it all off, Zurdo wasn't a concussive puncher, a particularly big puncher at 168 or 175. He was always more of a volume guy.
Like David Weekavides?
Pillow fistavitas.
Last time we saw Zurdo, it seemed he changed his strategy a bit. He was using his jab more and moving more, crowding the pocket less.
That's his best bet to win this fight. I think it is. Because he can't hope to win it through strength of arms.
He's got to use what height he has and what length he has to move around, use the jab, walk this guy into punches.
Mitigate the exchanges.
Don't just trade with him because you can trade with him. That's what he wants. That's what he likes, what he prefers.
Box him.
And it looks a lot like that's what Zurdo was doing in the Joe Smith Jr. fight. He was boxing up Joe Smith Jr. He's got to box up Arsene Goulemarian.
Arsene Goulemarian hasn't fought in over a year. He hasn't fought since late 2022. He sat out all of last year.
So he's got some ring rust to shake off, and Zurdo Ramirez has that working for him. The way I see it, so long as Zurdo Ramirez can make the fight mildly competitive by boxing up Arsene Goulemarian, moving around, using the ring, using the jab,
so long as he can finish the fight on his feet, he'll get the consideration that he needs to win a points decision.
It's not uncommon for that to happen on a Golden Boy promotion show. Marlon Esparza has won several title fights.
By the skin of her teeth.
The same could be true for Zurdo this weekend, so long as he doesn't get himself knocked down or knocked out.
This guy can punch.
Well enough for a cruiserweight, he can. He's 27-0 with 17 KOs. He's a close quarters fighter, so because he's a close quarters fighter, you create space. You don't just give him what he wants.
Use the jab.
Measure, frame him, and set him up for other punches. Zurdo's got his work cut out for him this weekend.
I don't think it's going to be easy.
But on his toes, maybe he can win a points decision.